What's up, guys? Back with John, Jake, and Tiffany. And today we're going to be talking about Unit 5.4.3.8.1, checks and balances. In this unit, we'll be talking about checks and balances, which is a system set up by the government to prevent one branch from gaining too much power. Without further ado, let's get into it.
One form of checks and balances is separation of powers. Separation of powers distributes the powers between three different branches, and it allows that not one group will have all the power, and it's distributed between the three. In the United States federal government, the executive branch has the power to enforce laws, the legislative branch has the power to create laws, the judicial branch has the power to review laws. The judicial branch's power to review legislation came from the Supreme Court case Marbury v. Madison. In 1803, Marbury sued Madison to the Supreme Court to get his commission of a writ of mandamus. The Supreme Court ruled that it was unconstitutional to have the Supreme Court grant a writ of mandamus, and that was unconstitutional. This established the idea of judicial review and the fact that the Supreme Court has the ability to review legislation and determine if it is constitutional or not. This is a form of a checks and balance because when Congress makes a law, so the Supreme Court will review it, and if it is unconstitutional, then they can make that law invalid. Therefore, the Supreme Court can have a check on the legislative branch.
An important document that goes hand in hand with checks and balances is Federalist 51. Written by James Madison in 1788, Federalist 51 Papers establishes that even though there will be a strong national government, the separation of powers disallows one branch of government from gaining too much power over the other, keeping everything in check. An example of checks and balances are the formal and informal powers of POTUS. The formal powers of POTUS is the president has the ability to create appointments for the Supreme Court and can veto an act of legislation made by Congress, therefore striking it down, acting as a check. The president also has informal powers, which includes a pocket veto and the executive order, which is a way the president can pass his own orders, which also acts as a check on Congress. The difference between formal and informal powers is that the formal powers are stated in Article 2 of the Constitution, whereas informal powers are not. And per usual, Tiffany could not make it in the office today, so we're going to be sending you to New York.
Talking about Congress and the role it plays on our systems of checks and balances. So, as we know, Congress is the bicameral legislative branch of the government that the two other branches of government respond to. So, like the president, Congress also has enumerated powers that are listed in the Constitution. For Congress, these powers can be found in Article 1, Section 8. So, among other enumerated powers, the legislative branch has the power to write laws, declare war, regulate interstate and foreign commerce, to control taxing and spending policies, as well as do anything necessary and proper to carry out any of its enumerated powers. So, what checks does Congress put on the other branches of power? Well, let's start with the judicial branch. The Constitution specifies that the judicial power of the United States will be vested upon one Supreme Court and inferior courts as Congress established. So, the details of organization and authority are left to Congress to decide through legislation. So, things like how big the Supreme Court is, what falls under its jurisdiction, how many inferior courts it will need, what kind of cases it will hear. Congress can use its constitutional authority to make these decisions. Going along with this, although the president is the one who nominates the justices for the Supreme Court, the Senate is who has the sole power to confirm these appointments. This is a super crucial check on the presidency. This gives the Senate influence over the composition of the executive and judicial branches. Congress also has the ability to override the president's vetoes. And then lastly, another critical check that Congress has is its ability to investigate. It has congressional oversight. It can investigate the misuse of federal funds and abuses of power, and it also has the ability to gather new information to create new legislation. Congress's ability to investigate is one of its most important tools when it comes to developing public policy, conducting oversight, and informing the public.